Hi, this is Gavin from Just Digital Media, and in this screencast I'm going to be taking a look at some screencast editing and arranging of media in the timeline. I'm going to be doing that with Camtasia on the Mac, but obviously that's quite a representative and powerful screencast editor. So I'll be looking at importing video, audio, adjusting audio levels, crossfades, transitions, putting in some idents. So quite complicated material. And to do that, I'm going to be using one of my own screencasts about microphone technique, which involves a lot of those elements, and also screen capture, a bit of presentation, and some picture-in-picture video. So there'll be quite a lot covered. So I'll be moving through that fairly swiftly. Obviously, because I'm running Camtasia and looking at it, I won't be able to capture the screen with that, so I'm actually doing that with QuickTime. But usually I'd be capturing it directly into Camtasia, as I'll be discussing during the demonstration. So here we go. Okay, so now we're going to look at a few specific editing techniques, and for this I'm going to be using Camtasia on the Mac. There are of course alternatives. This just gives quite a lot of quite representative features, I think, and this is what I use to make my own screencasts. So it probably look quite familiar to any of you who've done much in the way of video editing. There's the timeline displayed down here with time running from 0 to, in this case, 14 minutes, about 14-minute, quite a long screencast here. And then all of the clips, audio and video clips I'm including in the screencast are placed along the timeline. This top left section here is the familiar media library, and I can have a look at each one of the elements I've got here. These are all the various takes that I've done. But the critical difference between this and most video recording software is this button here, the new recording. If I were to press this, Camtasia will be hidden and the recorder dialog comes up asking me what I want to record. The full screen capture, or you can capture a custom region or a specific size. Let's stick with full screen. You can also capture an external webcam. I've got a built-in iSight camera which I could capture picture-in-picture as well. Built-in input or an external, my built-in microphone, or the external Apogee 1 interface, which I'm using at the moment. And I can also choose to capture system audio. So pretty much everything that's going on the computer can be captured to Camtasia, and that then will generate these little clips here. What you do with these once you've got them is drag and drop them into the timeline, and they appear like that. So if I undo that, Apple said, and that's what I've done here. I've put all of these individual clips into place, and then if I zoom in and let you have a bit of a closer look. So this one, for example, if I move the playhead along here, that goes through the intro sequence, which is made up of various graphical elements, and then into my presentation, and there I am, and my little picture-in-picture on top of my presentation slides, which were being played from Keynote. So if I then press play, there we go. So I don't know if you had that, if we're capturing system audio with QuickTime, which is what I'm using to capture this. I've also put in some text elements. This is a little index, because it is quite a long screencast, to allow people to navigate through it a little bit more easily. And then if I zoom back out so that we're not looking quite so close up, each one of these I can then change the beginning and end points. I can chop off the beginning or the end, get it to the right size, and in the case of audio and also video clips, I can also include fades. So that's an audio fade out and fade in, just to make things a little bit smoother in transition. And similarly, you can have video fades, various other transitions. I tend to use quite simple ones. I think it gets a bit manic if you have things flying around, but that's just me. And then you put the whole thing together along the timeline. So that's kind of an overview of of the display, and I'll just quickly show you a couple of specific processes as well. Okay, so now I'm going to take a closer look at the first section of my screencast, just the first few minutes, because that includes several of the elements that you'll probably come across in creating a sort of quite a more complicated screencast. At this point, I've placed the playhead over this particular point because we have several elements layered on top of each other. There's a text element, the index, giving time for the various sections of the screencast, because it is quite long, and that's highlighted when I click on it. Below that is the audio, which is the voiceover, and that was recorded with the picture-in-picture video, of course, to ensure synchronization. That comes next, and that's on top of the bottom track, which is my slide, which is the background. So these are layered one on top of the other, and as I click each one, its properties will come up in the editor window here. So for example, if I click on the text, I can scale it. Just move it along so we can see it. I can choose the size of the box, the opacity, in other words how transparent or opaque it is. I can rotate it, not that I want to do that, but I could, and position it, or I can just simply drag and drop it. So all of these elements can be placed in the correct positions in the screen, and you can also apply video or audio effects to corresponding types of track. So video effects, for example, are highlighted when I select video effects. We see all the video fades, so these are just little fade in, fade out. And similarly, if I select an audio track and audio effects, we'll see, well, there aren't any fades on there, but if I wanted to put one in, for example, I could just pick up an audio fade, drop it into the end, decide how long it's going to be. Oops. A nice fade out there. So it's as simple as that. Now, for this screencast, which you can see as part of our screencasting workflow advice document, I had to do several takes because, well, A, it's quite long, and doing all of that in one take is quite tricky, but also I was demonstrating several different microphones, so I've got to, I have to edit several pieces together. I have to compile different videos into my final track. So that's why I've got all of these different takes, which I've tried to put into a sensible order, and then there's the accompanying presentation slides as well. Sometimes when you're moving between different sections, there isn't any kind of natural break between them. I've used at one or 2 points little graphic idents to move between sections, and also fades to black, which is a kind of a classic television trick, which you probably see earlier on. And also audio crossfades. Now, one or two of these are fade in, fade out, but sometimes also I've fluffed it, which does happen. I know it's hard to believe, but it does. And then I can just stop, chop at the playhead, and insert the correct audio instead. So for example, if I wanted to make an edit there, I can split all at the playhead. All of these tracks will now be cut into pieces. So if this was a point at which I've made an error, I could select that bit, delete it, and make a new recording. Carry on as if nothing had happened, and just make a little fade between the two. So it isn't necessary always to get everything right in one take. If you're happy with what you've done up to that point, then just stop and continue from where you were, and then edit together in post-production. It's really not as difficult as all that. And then once I've reached the last section, I've got to fade into a slide giving our details, and then finally our outro screen. So all of these can be made in, well, I mean, they're standard files. They're JPEGs, they're movie files, Nothing unusual in any of these files. I can import all sorts of media from around my computer. JPEGs, TIFFs, movies, all of these are compatible. They'll just come straight into the media manager and then can be placed in the timeline, added to your screencast. So that's kind of a quick overview of some basic editing features, obviously specific to this one application, but you'll find very similar things in many screencasting apps. Hope that's useful.